Hi John, this is James Parker. Thanks for taking me up on a online swing evaluation, mate. I appreciate it. Just spent a few minutes going through your golf swing and also going through your questionnaire as well. So the shot patterns are a push, a hook, and inconsistent ball striking, right? So fat shots, thin shots, things like that. So why don't we go straight into the diagnosis of why you're doing that first, and then we'll talk about your golf swing a little bit. So I think you got a pretty good move. You can tell you can play some good golf with what you've got going on. If we kind of get you down somewhere just before impact, maybe around P6. The first thing that stands out to me when people are complaining of hitting the ball fat, it's like where are they just before impact? Well, you can see your hands quite far back on the circle, right? So there's your left arm in green. The pros at P6 have the left arm on that blue line and their hands over their right thigh, right? So straight away the hands are a little too far back on the circle, right? So therefore they're going to be too far back at impact, right? You can see left arm too far back, hands too far back. You see the pros, their hands are right down underneath the left shoulder at impact, right? And you can see with that shot as well how you're just bottoming out just a little bit before the ball, just going to catch a little bit of turf before the ball. So that's the first thing that stands out to me with regards to low point. Okay, we could also get our lower body a bit more forward as well. So even though you do a good job of keeping the hips between the red lines going back as we come down, and there's some movement to the left to get our weight forward, it's still not forward enough, right? If you look at impact here, right, a few things stand out to me here. Number one, hips haven't cleared very much. Shoulders definitely haven't cleared very much, and the right foot's still on the ground, right? So as far as what the club's doing just into impact, just before impact, you can see how the club's underneath the plane, right? So when we start off, we draw a line up through the club, and then another one through the elbow plane line. So as we come down, we'll talk about your swing in a second, but as we approach impact, you can see how that club head very much underneath the shaft plane line, right? So it's going to be attacking the ball a little bit too much on the inside. So the things, what I'm saying is the diagnosis of your shots, the push shot, the hook shot, the fat shot, the diagnosis is, we've got low point issues, so we need to work on things to get your low point more forward past the ball, and we've got a little path issue there with the club attacking the ball just a smidgen too far from the inside. You can see how that club head's just underneath the shaft plane line, right? So then we go into, so that's the diagnosis. The diagnosis is low point and path. They're the two things that you work on to affect your shot patterns. So then you go into, what changes do we need to make to alter the shot patterns? Well, the first thing I would work on would be down into impact, would be making sure we're opening our turns more, right? So the way that the pros do it is as they come down by P5, right? if you're into stack and tilt, you know about the positions and all that sort of stuff, right? By P5, the pros have got their hips back to square, whereas your hips still look closed. By P6, the pros have got their shoulders back to square. Your shoulders are still very closed. By P7, they've got their hips and their shoulders turned out the way 30 odd degrees, right? So you can see their shoulders are kind of just square, hips are maybe just fractionally open. So that's where I'd start with regards to, you know, the changes that need to take place, right? We need to, in a nutshell, we need to open our turns more, okay? The next thing is we need to get our hands more forward, right? We need to get our hands more forward at P6, and we need to get our hands more forward at P7. So you see the pattern of the pros. Well, I'll show you some examples in a second, but like I just said, they get their hands over their right thigh at P6. Okay, so these are the things that would need to change, and also obviously how much you lag the club, right? So, you know, as you come down, one of the you do a decent job going back, just hinging your wrists, right? Radial deviation. Get to about 90. Get to about 90 degrees. But then as the pros come down, as they get down to P5, there, the pattern you see with the pros is that they've increased the lag, right? Whereas if anything, you're throwing it away a little bit already. So then by P6, you've thrown it away a bit more. And then by P7, you've thrown it away a little bit more, right? So we need to get our hands more forward and increase the lag, okay? And then the other thing that needs to change is we need to get our weight forward a bit, right? We need to get our weight forward. If we take your right pocket, right, we'll stop you there. That's where you are at P7, right? P8, your right pocket's only just like 2 inches more forward, right? At P8, you see the pros, their right pocket's by that front red line there. Right, and you can really see how, with regards to your turns, like I said, at P7 we want to be like 30 odd degrees turned out the way open with our hips and shoulders. At P8, right arm parallel with the ground, there. Now your shoulders have done a pretty good job, right? They've turned through enough, about 80 degrees. That's kind of where the PGA Tour range is, right? With that amount of shoulder turn at P8, but hips have really slowed down now. Look how much your hips have turned, right? So at P8, what we're looking for is both hips and shoulders to have turned out the way about 80 degrees. So let's give you an example. Grant weight. And there's other things going on. There's other things going on in your swing before we talk about that. There's other things going on in your swing, like, you know, you're not quite bending backwards enough at the top. You can see this, your upper spine, your thoracic spine here. You know, that angle, you see, you know, what you see the pros do is they get up to the top, and this is more kind of up and down. So they've bent backwards a little bit more, right? So, you know, I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But then as we start moving, right, get you down to P5, put a little mark where your right pocket is. Get you down to 6, put another mark where your right pocket is. Get you down to 7, right pocket. Get you down to 8, right pocket. Right, so this is what I mean by getting the weight forward and also turning the hips. Right. In fact, we can use Grant weight as a model for the lag as well. Right, so P5. Right, so look at the difference in the lag. And then if the club's staying behind you more, right, more lag, club head staying behind you more, look where he can get to at P6. Look where his hands are over his thigh, right? When your hands get over your thigh, club's down here. So that's what I mean by throwing it away. Right, so we need hands more forward and the club head, more lag in the club head. But for this little example, let's just do P7 with the right pocket, and then P8 with the right pocket. So P7, P8. Right. So look how now at this point, maybe come back a little bit, it'll be a little bit fairer. So shoulders have turned that much, hips have turned that much, about 80 degrees. Right. So that's a good model to use. So let's get you back up here. So that's what we need to change, right? We need to open our turns more, we need to get our hands more forward, we need more lag, we need our weight more forward, right? So how would we, if we went and spent some time on the range and I had an hour with you on the range, what would we do to implement the changes, right? Well, I've got another model that I want to show you. Robert Rock. And what I want you to watch particularly is his right arm. Right, a little bit in the takeaway, right? We can talk about that in a second. Right, his hands are more kind of between the two red lines, going more up the slot. And then he gets to there at the top, right? And we'll do this in yellow. And I'll draw a line from his shoulder to his elbow and put a little arrow on the end. And then I'll draw a little line from your shoulder to your elbow. I'll put a little arrow on the end. Alright. So basically his right elbow is pointing more back behind him, back towards the camera angle. Right. Not quite pointing back to the camera, but certainly way more than what you're doing. Right. You're pointing your elbow out here, and he's pointing his elbow more sort of back this way, back towards the camera. That's what I mean by that, right? So in a nutshell, what that means is, what he's doing is he's squeezing his elbows closer together. So that's the first thing I want you to change, right? How you would implement these changes. I want you to squeeze your elbows closer together. Now, you can practice this with there's a great website, Martin Chuck's website, called Tour Striker, and he's got this great little training aid where you put a little cord around your neck, and on the end of the cord there's a ball, right? You set up to it. It's kind of resting down your neck, around here, and there's a ball hanging on the bottom, right? Your job is to keep the ball between your elbows as you get up to the top, and as you get to the top, squeeze these elbows together. Right? That's your job there. Now the reason I say that is because the better you squeeze your elbows together, the more you're going to get your right elbow down in front of your wrist coming down and create a little bit more lag. Right? You can see as you come down there, how this right arm just gets a little bit stuck behind your right hip, right? Whereas as he comes down, gets his elbow just nicely in front of his hip there. Now, the next thing that's going to affect that position is, well, actually, let's talk about this next. Let me get you up from face on again. So I've made a few notes. I want to make sure I get through. I want to make sure I get through the notes because this is important stuff. So what that's going to do, what that's going to help you do coming down, is it's going to help you keep that right arm bent longer coming down to P6. So as you come down to P6, look, you see how this right arm's just kind of straightening out down here. Whereas if we put a model up, maybe let's get Rocky again. Right, just a little bit more bent there, whereas yours looks as though it's longer. Right, so the idea of squeezing your elbows together at the top is going to help you keep this right arm bent coming down to P6. Okay, that's important. And then the next one, right, the next one, which is a good one, which I think will really help you, is, well, you know, one of your issues coming down, one of the reasons why you're getting it a little underneath the plane there with the club head, is because your turns are too closed, right? We need to open your turns a bit more. You see how closed your shoulders are? See how square your hips are there? And then coming into impact, they're just not open enough, right? They're just not open enough. So the elbows squeezing together, keeping the right arm more bent, coming down, that's going to help it. But also you need something to kind of pull, right? You need something to pull it along. So what I would do is I'd get a glove or a T-peg, and I'd put a glove or a T-peg underneath your left arm. And then as you get up to the top, this elbow is going to be closer to this elbow, right? So those elbows are going to be closer together. And then as you come down, the glove or the T-peg under your left arm, I'm saying, right, make sure that, and you know, there's going to be a little bit squeezing under your armpit. And I would say, right, well then make sure you're pulling that. Make sure you're pulling that harder and more aggressively. And then what you'd find is this left, and even there at impact, look, even there at impact, if we zoom in, I can still see a lot of your left shoulder there. So if you had something under your armpit and you've got a bit of pressure under your armpit, a little bit of pinching under your armpit, you can then work on turning it harder, right? Now, another little tip for you would be, as we as one of the things that we want to change is to, you know, get a weight a bit more forward and turn harder, right? Weight more forward by getting our hips more forward. We talked about that, right? Turn harder with the hips and shoulders. We've talked about that. One of the things that has really helped the players that I work with is understanding that, yes, okay, we want their hips kind of central, or maybe a little bit more bias over towards our left foot at the top, and then move our hips more over our left foot at impact, right? And then even more post impact. But that's weight, right? That's talking weight distribution. What I would like you to do is start to understand the difference between weight and pressure, right? So start incorporating some more pressure transfer. So basically, you know, let's say to about there, right? Let's say to about there. So you see the club head here, right? So let's say let's say there, maybe just past P2, just before you get to P3, just past P2, maybe P2.5, right there. That's when the club head is the furthest from the target, right? So at that point, under your trail foot, right there, you're going to have 80% of your pressure, right? And you're going to build up that pressure under your foot by straightening your right leg a little bit, which you do a nice job of. See, your right leg straightens there, right? So you do a pretty good job of straightening your right leg. As you're doing it, just push down, get 80% of your body weight, your body. You know, if you were standing on some scales and you weighed 100, 200 pounds, try and push down 160 pounds into your right foot there. Now, as you get up to the top, you've got to then to start to transfer the pressure, because at the top, the pressure settles back under this lead foot, right? Because as you start down, about there, now we've got 80% of our pressure under this foot, 80%, right? So the transfer of pressure happens from there on the backswing to there on the downswing. And I don't think you're doing that enough, right? And what I'm saying is the process of doing that just completely transforms the dynamics of the golf swing, right? You start pushing down harder under your feet. You start squatting more. You start turning harder because it's faster, it's more dynamic. And a lot of the things that I've just spoken about with regards to needing more lag, with regards to turning harder and opening our turns, right? Because the more we open our turns, the more you'll start to see this club head start coming down between the two red lines, keeping it on plane, right? Your path is just a little bit too underneath the plane. And for me, that's caused from having your shoulders closed and your hips not open enough, right? So that would be the last little tip that I would want you to go through is understanding the difference in weight distribution and pressure distribution. The weight is something we can see with regards to, you know, where your head is, where the center of your hips move to, how much, at what point in the swing. The pressure, you can't see. The pressure you're going to feel, right? So I want you to feel about that point, 80% under your trail foot. At that point, 80% under your lead foot. And just looking at the dynamics of your lower body, and then we compare you to someone like, let's use Rocky again. And I want you to watch his knees at that point, right? Look how much pushing down he's got. Look how much more squatting he's got, right? So that's what I'd want you to. That's what I'd want to see in your golf swing, mate. Hope that makes sense. Kind of rambled on a little bit, but I made a few notes, so I wanted to get through all the notes. But if you have any questions, just by all means shoot me back an email. Thanks, John.